computer. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Second Sunday Crime, which is sometimes on Sunday and sometimes never on Sunday. Anyway, this is Libby Hellman, and I am already, forecasting. What do they call it when you in books when you forecast? Foreshadowing. My guest today, who is none other than Paul Levine, who is one of the wittiest, most wonderful people I know in this business. And his new book is called Cheater's Game, and it was terrific. I loved the trial. I mean, once you get into that trial, you cannot possibly leave it. And we're going to talk to Paul about all of that. But first, let me just say that this is a trademark podcast, trademark copyrighted podcast owned solely by the Authors on the Air Network. And that's all I have to say. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you, Libby. Wonderful to be here.
Yeah, it's great to see you. I mean, we were just saying before the show that we haven't seen each other in a really long time, maybe since we went to Seattle.
Amazon? We went to Seattle to see Amazon with Lee Goldberg, Joel Goldman, Libby Hellman, me. Oh, those were the days.
Those were the days, yes.
We could travel.
Yeah, we had a good time. That was a good time. Things have changed. Well, at least for some of us. Anyway, so tell me where you came up with the idea of Cheater's Game. Did you start writing it I think you must have started writing it before all of the news broke about it.
Well, this is what happened, Libby. And the news, of course, we're talking about is the ongoing real-life college admission scandal.
Right.
And it was March of last year, 2019, and boom, this big news story hits. All of these parents get indicted for paying bribes to get their children, I was going to say dullard children, that's not even fair, to get their kids into elite universities by either bribing coaches to pretend they were athletes, bribing admissions directors, or having a ringer, an imposter, take their college boards. And as everybody knows who's been following it, there were very wealthy people, senior partners in law firms, owners of vineyards, Hollywood actresses who were swept up in this. And it just hit me sideways. And I go, who are these parents? What is the message they're sending to their kids? You're not really good enough to get into USC. And I'll be embarrassed if you go to SMU. This is a real case. I'm not making that up.
Yeah.
And I said, I got to get Kip Lassiter, my series character, into the trial, which hasn't happened yet, still hasn't happened yet, except in Cheater's Game. You want a preview of the real trial, I give you my version of it.
Yeah.
So that's how it got started.
Okay, so it had happened because I was thinking maybe it hadn't. So you really had fun with it, didn't you? I mean,
well, yeah, I had fun in a really perverse way of making fun, I guess, or ridiculing. It's really not a nice trait of mine, but these parents, the ringleader who has pled guilty, singer, and trying to examine sort of the social issues involved, the parenting issues involved. And then, and this came to me later, the universities, who in some cases turned a blind eye to this. Well, they had some money coming in, they got siphoned off to some bribes, but some money did get contributed. And I believe that many of the universities knew this was going on, didn't really care, because and I don't want to get too serious because it's a novel and it is fun, and I hope it's fun. The trial I had a lot of fun with. I see a lot of humor in the court, as you know from my earlier books.
Yeah.
A lot of people think, oh my God, a court, it's dull, it's this, it's that. Here's some documents we're going to introduce, and here's a medical examiner doing an autopsy. There's a lot of fun that happens in the court.
Yeah.
And I just thought that the university should also be held to task. And what happened to the idea of a meritocracy? Because we know, independent of this scandal, that major universities, elite universities, give preference to children of donors, children of prominent alumni and athletes. Okay, that's fine. That's the system. Or is it fine? At least let's take a look at that. That's one of the things I would say.
Well, it's kind of the system on steroids now.
Yeah, and if you're willing to write a check for $500,000, in the trial, Jake Lassiter is cross-examining an admissions director. Let me say a fictitious admissions director from a fictitious university called Stanford University. Oh, all right. And he asks, well, how much do you charge for an admission slot? He said, well, we don't charge for admission slots. Well, yes, you do. You said that, because he previously asked, $100,000 wouldn't get you. How much would? And it is true. They don't say it that way. But if your grandfather built a building on an Ivy League campus, you're getting in. If your parents have established a $5 million endowed chair, you're getting in. That's just a fact.
What if you just give like $100 or a couple $100 every year? Does that get the kid in?
That would let you get a tour of the campus from a bus, and then you can go to community college after that. Yeah.
Okay.
But as you suggest, that's kind of the serious part of it. The other part, Jake Lassiter has a nephew who he has raised, Kip, who's gone a little bit wayward.
Have we met Kip in other books?
Yes, Kip's been in other books, starting from when he was about 11 or 12, and now he's 20. He's really, really smart, but he's gone off the straight and narrow. He's had problems. He was kind of a juvenile delinquent when Jake basically adopted him. And he's the brilliant, the savant, who, much like the real person who has pled guilty, if you say to this person, the real person, and then I gave this trait to Kip, my daughter needs a 1330 to get into Yale. He'll get you a 1330 on your SAT, but not a 1380 because that would be too high based on her prior score and red flags would go up. If you want a 1600, he gets you 1600. So I kind of think, shouldn't he be doing something with his life more important, with a greater social purpose than cheating on other people's exams?
Yeah.
And he, by the way, is a Harvard graduate and for a time was a tennis pro. So there was just so much in the real college admissions scandal that I think bears scrutiny.
But you also had a lot of fun with the legal system. I mean, that judge was, tell us about the judge, because he was a character.
Well, the judge, Lionel Spidell, 350-pound judge, a federal judge, so he's appointed for life. And like some federal judges I have known, he looks down on lawyers who practice in the state system.
Right, that was clear, yeah.
Lassiter never really had a full jury trial in federal court, so he's a bit of a fish out of water, and he makes mistakes. He tries cases in Miami, what's called the Justice Building, which sits next to an industrial river, the Miami River, that has a lot of oily tanker traffic on it. So the federal judge Spidell said, yeah, you practice in that slum down by the river. Right. And Jake is just a little bit intimidated, notwithstanding the fact, he's been doing this for a while and is always flirting with contempt. I believe he is held in contempt in this book. And I think I can say this. The judge says, Mr. Lassiter, you are flirting with contempt. And he says, flirting, hell, I'm going to take contempt and hump her from here to Hialeah.
You have such a way with words, Paul. Where did that come from?
I was always the wise guy in school, getting in trouble for talking too much and making jokes and that sort of thing.
Well, was your family, really kind of either not literate, but very vocal?
I don't think so. I was an only child, so I did provide the entertainment for, you know,
Okay.
our little small family. Um, but I don't know. You know, I could ask you, you know, what led you into journalism and what led you into writing fiction. And you may know, I sense, whether it's you or me or our friends, you're an innate storyteller. It's in your genes, it's in your DNA, and then hopefully you get an opportunity to do writing, whether it's nonfiction or journalism or fiction.
You know,
That's my guess.
I always say to friends, I said, I have a story for you. You know, even if it's just something that happened to me during the day or something that happened to a friend,
Yeah.
like, listen to this story. You're not going to believe this.
And then you tell the story that has 3 acts.
Yeah, so Kip does a 180 in the book. First, he's kind of like this smug, you know, you're an old fogey. And I could just see you, being Lassiter. I could just see you in that role. And, you know, Jake is not happy and wants to, I felt like he was going to break out in tears at one point.
Well, I think I was tapping into something that a lot of parents go through, like every parent, that there's a time in the life of raising a child when they're teenagers, in this case 20, when the kid thinks he or she knows more than you do, that you're stuck in the past, or Kip said, you're so old school, Jake. Well, yeah, he is old school if that means certain protocols and good manners and well, not breaking the law left and right. It not being able to communicate with your child at certain points. And I think he does a little, you know, he does these interior monologue mini essays the way Travis McGee did in the John D. McDonald books, because I always believe in stealing from the best. You know, it's modeled after those. And he talks about that. Who is this boy? Who is this boy I raised? I don't recognize him. Why is he saying these things?
So, but he does change. He just flips a 180 when he realizes the seriousness of it.
Yeah, and in fact, yeah, giving too much away. I mean, to go from making $25,000-$30,000 a day taking somebody else's SAT exams to saying, hey, I'm going to create a tutoring program for underprivileged children to teach them how to take the exam on their own. There's a journey that he has to go through. All your main characters in books have their own journeys.
Not to be a Debbie Downer, but when Kip was still in his mode of being, you know, the smooth operator and everything, I couldn't help but think about all the young people who don't take COVID seriously. And like, it's not for me. We're fine, you know?
Exactly. There is this feeling of invulnerability, and I can get away with this, that runs through that kind of conduct. I think of that. I see a young person on a motorcycle without a helmet on. Right. You know, what do you want your parents to have to come to the ER and see you on life support?
Yeah, but you know, when I was young, I was that way too. So, you know.
Well, we all were, because, you know, being young is kind of a synonym for being stupid.
Insufferable.
Insufferable. Oh God, now we're sounding old now. What are the demographics of this podcast? I hope it's what Jake says is between Medicare and the mortuary, because we need an older demographic, or they're turning us off right now.
Actually, we get some young people. I don't know how, but you know, there's young people. Okay. Tell me about the characters. Which character, aside from Jake, did you have the most fun, or were you really captivated about writing?
Well, my newest character, who is now continuing character, is Dr. Melissa Gold, who's a neuropathologist. She's modeled after a real woman who is the leading researcher on CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy. So the subplot, the personal story, in television we call it the B story, is Jake Lassiter, having been a pro football player before he went to night law school and became a lawyer, has suffered multiple concussions over many years, going back to his playing days at Penn State and then with the Dolphins. And he may be suffering from CTE, which, as we know, is a fatal brain disease. And he's being treated by, and then kind of falls in love with, Dr. Melissa Gold, who runs the Concussion Project at the University of Miami. And because she's a new character, it gives me a chance to do something with her. And because in the early books, when Jake was younger and I was younger, and To Speak for the Dead, Night Vision, Pulse Dawn, all of those, he seemed to be falling for these women who, how can I say this, who were not substantial. I think one time he was asked, what kind of woman wouldn't you date? He said, well, I draw the line at fleeing felons. Other than that, yeah, they haven't jumped bail, they're in the ballpark. So a doctor who's smarter than he is, more accomplished than he is, but sees something in him, he's matured. So it's not falling for the femme fatale. A lawyer probably should know better than falling for a woman who's killed her husband.
Yeah.
You're defending her books, right?
What does she see in him? I mean, you made it pretty clear in the book what she sees in him, but since she is smarter and since she is more accomplished and since she is more serious than Jake, what do you think she sees in him?
Underneath the bluster and underneath the sarcasm and the wise guy humor, she sees a person of decency who's caring. She loves the way he has taken this child into his home, Kip, and raised him when his mother basically abandoned him. She was a serial shoplifter, went from town to town, committing penny-ante crimes. One point, Jake says, I'd call her a gypsy, but that would be an insult to the Romani people. So he's giving and he's caring, but you have to see underneath that surface. Yeah.
I know this, I'm jumping around a little bit, but you have the best lines. I mean, does that just come naturally to you, or do you have to work at it when you, what you just quoted me, which was about an insult to the Romani people? Did that just flow out of you when you were in the zone, or did you have to really stop and say, I wonder what I should use as a simile or something?
I never know during the creative process when something's going to pop into my head. There's Jake. I know he lives in this little kind of cruddy old Coral Rock house. It's small. And he says, my kitchen's so small the roaches walk in single file. I don't know. It's there. It's just there. He turns on the TV. This is Miami in August. He turns on the TV. The weatherman is babbling. Chance of thunderstorms tomorrow. Humidity 93 degrees. Jake goes, okay. Could have mailed that in.
It's almost a George Carlin kind of humor.
Oh, well, yeah. My hero. I wouldn't even put myself in that level, but yeah, he was something else. Wordsmithery.
Well, you do it really, really well.
Thank you, Libby.
So,
you to say so. Hey, and so do you.
Well, thanks. Have you written from the point of view of women before?
In the Solomon versus Lord series.
Right, of course, Victoria.
The mismatched lawyer, Steve Solomon, bears a little relation to Lassiter, but he's less ethical. And Victoria Lord, very, very upright, straight arrow, get thrown together in Solomon versus Lord, which, if I may say, is the #1 best-selling financial thriller right now, and #5 illegal thriller.
Wait, you wrote? How long ago did you write it?
2005.
It's #1 today?
Yeah, this last week. Yeah.
Now, wait.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It was written 15 years ago, and it's a #1 bestseller today, 15 years later. That's pretty pretty amazing, Paul.
Well, thank you. You know, people who are old enough to remember, now that I've established the demographics, who can remember Moonlighting with Bruce Willis and Sybil Shepherd. That's kind of the dynamic. And that, I've had so much fun writing from Victoria Lord's point of view, contrasting hers with his. So alternate chapters, his point of view, her point of view. He thinks he's being charming. She thinks he's being an idiot. It's life. It's life. So yeah, that's a lot of fun. It's challenging to write from a woman's point of view for a man, and I guess vice versa. And I think it took me a long time. I had to mature as a man as well as mature as a writer before I felt confident enough to do that.
Did I ever tell you the story? See, right there we go.
Go ahead.
Did I ever tell you the story about my first critique group, or when I was a newbie, and I was writing a book that has not been published and it never will be, and I had two cops going into a house to interview a suspect or somebody, a witness or something. And when the cop enters the house, the first thing he notices are the curtains.
There's a male cop?
A male cop. My writers group said, I think you've got a little problem with your male characters.
Yes. And what lovely wainscoting in this room. Yes, yes. Right.
I learned quickly after that. Anyway.
Now then you rewrote, he came in and goes, "You got a beer?"
Right. Those curtains, they're terrible. No, okay. Yeah. So what's next for Jake?
Well, the medical issue, the CTE that he may be suffering from, I think is going to be front and center of the next book. And also, you know that it's not just former pro football players who are coming down with this disease. It's an organic brain disease. Now we're worried about high school football. We're worried about women soccer players doing headers, field hockey, everything else. So I think there's going to be a young person who is in jeopardy, in the medical jeopardy that he is, and there'll be a legal issue come out of that.
Okay. Okay, and what about him? I mean, do you see him? I mean, you made it pretty clear, at least when I was reading the book, that he definitely has this, you know.
I think he does.
Yeah.
But you see, you know, in real life, which I try to adhere to, you can't make a positive diagnosis until after death because you have to slice into the brain tissue. And in other words, you need an autopsy. And when they're doing tests on him, he says, "I'm drawing the line at the autopsy. You can poke all the needles you want into me, but that's where I draw the line." So yes, he's showing all of these symptoms. And of course, we know in real life, like just a few months ago, actually the book had been written. I then put something in. Nick Bonacani, former Miami Dolphin linebacker like Jake, who went to law school like Jake, had a successful career, died of CTE. Jake does cry in the book when he's thinking about Nick, and there are other people who would have been his former teammates from that era who have died of CTE. So this is a pretty heavy subject.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so now you went to Penn State, and you were a big Penn State football fan, and good reason. Has the disease changed your view about football at all?
Well, I think that the future of football is in jeopardy, and I don't know what the answer is. If I had a teenage son who wanted to play tackle football, I don't know what my answer to that would be. We know that just having a better helmet doesn't work. Mm-hmm. Keeps you from getting a fractured skull. It doesn't keep the brain pan from sloshing around when you take a hit. So I worry about the future of football. I think it's important to our society, but then so is not killing people.
Yeah, but do you still watch games and
God, yes.
Cheer them on and cuss them out? And
hopefully I'll be watching games next month. I'm hoping. Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Yeah.
It's been with me for a long time.
Yeah, I don't know. You know, when I was a teenager and well, really up until about 20 years ago, I was, you know, Redskins.
Right.
But,
But they're going to have a new name, so you can start up again.
no, I can start all over again. I don't know. It gets me angry when I see all these young men killing themselves for money. I mean, I hope it's worth it. I hope they're getting paid enough.
Look, it's an issue that can certainly be discussed on both sides with a lot of vigor.
Yeah, it can be. So did Melissa have any of the characteristics of the woman with whom you are in life married to and totally in love with? I couldn't.
Marcia Silvers, my lawyer wife, is not a neuropathologist.
You did mention her in the book, I know.
Yes, she, I think at one point in an earlier book, Jake needs a lawyer, but he can't afford her. But yes, I rely on a smart, sassy woman to take no crap from me, because that's what happens to Jake. So no question that Marcia's personality is incorporated into Dr. Melissa Gold.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
In fact, Gold, Silvers, you got it? Gold, Silvers. Uh-huh.
I thought maybe there might be a connection there.
Melissa, Marcia, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So in the book, the prosecutor is not as aggressive as I would have imagined the prosecutor to be.
Well,
tell me about that, because there were layers on layers in the book, and
right.
You know, the layers were Kip and the awful person that he ended up working for, but then there were all sorts of layers within the legal system, and I felt like she was under some kind of constraints.
She, of course, is an assistant U.S. attorney,
right.
Federal prosecutor. Again, Jake has never tried a case in federal court. We're used to seeing him in state court against some assistant state attorneys who are sort of clowns, to be honest, or just aren't that good a lawyer, and would cut corners or maybe even be unethical. I wanted her, particularly when I have a judge who's a little bit over the top with his 350 pounds and his
I would say that's
yes, his jowls that jiggle every time he yells at Lassiter. I put her right down the middle of the plate. A really smart, really good, really honest prosecutor, though she has to do what the U.S. attorney tells her to, and that included something that probably was not, strictly speaking, ethical. It wasn't. I don't want to give too much away, because I want people to read Cheater's Game. See, I forgot the first rule of doing podcasts. You're supposed to repeat the title of your book every 90 seconds.
Cheater's Game.
Yes, Cheater's Game.
Now, actually, that is one of my questions. I remember when you were struggling to come up with the title, and I like it. It's a great title. How did
I asked you for help.
Yeah, I did. I gave you a couple of lame suggestions, but
no, they weren't lame. Titles are hard. Libby, you know this. Titles are hard. And the problem is, you ask 6 of your friends who are writers, you get 6 different answers. Right. And finally, you just have to go with it yourself. And then, of course, you come up with a wonderful title, and you see it's been used, but not just used, but it was used in a big book. Because you can't copyright a title, so you can use another title.
Right.
But you're not going to use Gone with the Wind. You're just not.
So
well, maybe you should.
How did you come up with cheater?
I really like the word cheater. It's got a little oomph to it. It kind of grabs you. And there was a book called The Cheater's Game, which is about an unfaithful husband. But really? Nothing Cheater's Game, the college admission scandal. And you try, you hope what you're doing is right. You ask your friends like Libby Hellman, and you get their input.
Yeah. Did you get anything good from Lee or Joel?
Lee Goldberg never likes my titles.
He doesn't like anybody's books.
Lee is not shy about giving you his impression of things. You may have noticed, but we're a wonderful, happy group, aren't we?
Yeah, yeah. So, is there a book that you wish you had written? Is there? I mean, is there or a type of style that you wish you had written rather than the sort of lighthearted, the humor? I mean, it's not a lighthearted. You're not lighthearted because you're always exploring serious issues, but your characters are always very witty and funny and pithy.
Well, let me answer it this way. Not that I wish I'd written, but when I read it, I said, oh, I wish I could do that. And I would go back to before I was a writer, when I was still practicing law, something you know about. And I read Carl Hyacint's Taurus season, which was his first solo novel about a Miami Herald columnist who is so upset with the overpopulation of Florida, and this is 35 years ago, that he starts killing tourists in very bizarre ways. And of course, it's hilarious. And Carl's great talent is he also makes it look easy. And I go, oh, I think I can do that. And that had a big influence on me. And then I believe it's the very same year. I believe it's 1987. I have to look it up. Scott Turo's Presumed Innocent came out, which was his first true novel. He'd written one L. And I go, whoa, this is a mystery that had no humor in it, but what a mystery. And I think in my head, and I also think Presumed Innocent is the best legal thriller ever written. I put those two things together, Hyacint's humor and Scott Turo's legal thriller mystery, and something clicked for me.
Good for you. What kind of law did you practice when you were?
Expensive law. I was a civil litigator. I was a partner in a very large firm with, at that time, 1,000 lawyers, 2,000 now. Boring, complex civil litigation.
And when did you finally leave it? How many books had you written by the time you left?
Well, here's the career advice. Don't do what I did. I quit the practice before I had written a book, before I'd sold a book. And I just said, I'm just going to do this. I was really tired. I resigned my partnership, and I did practice part-time for a year on my own as I was writing the first book, To Speak for the Dead. And obviously, I did not follow the really good advice, don't give up your day job, but that's the way I did it.
Okay, and you haven't looked back since. How many books have you written now?
22.
Oh my God, good for you. Yeah. I remember you saying, it's kind of like after every book or before you're starting every book, you always say, I'm not going to do this anymore.
Absolutely.
I'm done. Yeah. It's kind of like the fear grabs you. I can't.
Well, the exhaustion goes, oh, I can't put myself through that again.
Yeah.
And then you realize there are some people in August in Miami pouring hot tar on roofs or on asphalt on streets, and I'm complaining that I'm tired because I'm sitting at a computer.
So how often I know you're living near Santa Barbara now, right?
Yes, Santa Barbara.
Do you go back to Florida at all?
As little as possible, yeah. You know, I haven't seen a mosquito since we moved here. Or hurricanes.
Send a few out if you're a mosquito. You're welcome to ours.
Thank you.
Anyway, so are you guys basically taking it, being very careful now because of the COVID in the state of California?
We're not traveling. We're in a relatively safe place because this is a metropolitan area, if you can call it that, of about 150,000. That takes in about 4 municipalities, county of 450,000. But of course, it's everywhere. As we know, Libby, now rural areas everywhere have it. So yes, you have to be careful. I was very happy today, went to the farmer's market before sitting down with you. 100% of the people at the market had masks on, and I would say on the streets, and this was in Little Montecito, joining us, all but 2 or 3 people had masks on.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Yeah, and in Chicago now there's a fine if you don't wear a mask.
Yeah.
So anyway, all right. Well, this has been a pleasure. I've had my fun for the weekend, I'm afraid. It's not going to be this much fun to talk to other people. You're great.
This was my pleasure. My pleasure, Libby.
I love having you on the show. We'll have to do it again very soon. I remember when you used to do this.
I did.
Yeah, but then you got sensible and you realized that it's too much trouble.
No, you're good at this. It's fun. It gets you involved. Keep doing what you're doing, kid.
You too. You keep
All
doing
right.
what you're doing. And I just sense that Jake, I don't know. I mean, there's this existential fear that I have about Jake because of the disease.
Well, you and I both, unfortunately for Jake, he would not know the definition of existential. So but we worry about him.
Anyway,
all right. Thank you, Libby.
Fun. And let me sign off and tell everybody that we'll be back again next month with another edition of Second Sunday Crime. And thanks for listening. Okay, let me, oh God, now I have to put my glasses back on and pause.